Week 11 recaps, starting out with the Seahawks and the 49ers, and honestly, as much of a rivalry as it is, it started out a little slower, I guess, but the billing was very much relevant here and very much understood. I mean, they were held to a punt to start out, the 49ers, and then the Seahawks scored a field goal on a drive that Jackson Smith and Jigba got some early contributions going, which would become a theme throughout this game, to be completely honest. Now, the 49ers would subsequently score a touchdown as they were able to drive down the field, and the play or so after Brock Purdy loses yardage with Derek Hall getting in the backfield. Derek Hall fails to do so and get past his assignment, leaving Jarran Reed on a quarterback spy with Brock Purdy, who has been one of the better scrambling quarterbacks over the past couple of years. Was a recipe for disaster. Like, Jarran Reed, as good as he can be in the trenches, there's no reason why he should have been left out there on an island with a quarterback who's likely faster, way faster than Jarran Reed could ever really be. And then, the Seahawks, despite Kenneth Walker breaking a few tackles and making some guys miss, the fact of the matter is that the center situation has become very interesting, with some news that I'll detail later. But just keep in mind that they would have a newer center in Olu Olatimi from Michigan. And he would snap the ball to Geno Smith, who then fumbled it for the 7th botched or fumbled snap this season, which is the most in the league. The Seahawks own that. Very weird stuff. Now, they would punt the ball, but the fortunes were very much in their favor when Devin Witherspoon, part of the best cornerback duo in the fucking league, tipped up a pass, or deflected a pass that got tipped up, and it was intercepted promptly by new defensive lineman Jonathan Hankins. I wonder if that's his first interception in his career or not. But it was a favorable play at that point, and it led to another field goal, albeit, it's fine to get points on the board, but when you start on their 29-yard line, you have to get a touchdown out of that, in my opinion. Now, the defenses would be on full display as they would trade punts before the end of the half, and then another interception would be thrown by Geno Smith to Isaac Yiadom. He was trying to extend the play, and it's just tough stuff. Like, he was trying to extend the play. I don't even know who he was going for. Jackson Smith and Jigba was trying to come back to the ball, and then there was another receiver deep. Either he underthrew it or overthrew it. And it was just a horrible situation. But still, the defense, with the likes of Draymond Jones and others, managed to hold the 49ers to a field goal despite them starting on the Seahawks' 27-yard line. That would promptly be followed up with a good drive led by another attempt by Geno Smith to extend a play, and this time he would beat Yiadom and get it just over his head to DK Metcalf for a 26-yard gain. He lost some of his balance, and that honestly could have been a touchdown, or at the very least a longer gain. But it was the play they needed to spur a drive, a huge drive. Jackson Smith and Jigba, quite literally, is not only clutch, but he is literally ascending right before our very eyes. This man has got to be already a pretty good option on the outside or in the slot, because it seems like no matter where he's been assigned, he knows exactly which zone to exploit, and he knows he's completely laser focused on what it is he needs to be doing. If he sees something that needs to be exploited on the defensive side, or sees something that Geno Smith is like looking for in like a scramble drill or etc., he's gonna adjust to it, and he's just going to make the play. It's not always anything flashy, but it certainly gets the job done when you're trying to move the ball down the field and impose your will. Surely enough, that would continue up until we get to the 1 yard line after a 17-yard Jackson Smith and Jigba catch off a screen, where on second goal, Kenneth Walker III would run it in for an easy touchdown. The 49ers would respond with the likes of, Jauan Jennings. Even with Devin Witherspoon doing as best as he could, even he was getting routed a little bit by Jauan Jennings, and he put them up 17-13. It was looking drastic after this 10-play, 33-yard drive that ended on a turnover on downs. It was the second attempt on fourth down on that very drive. And with that, there were only 4 minutes and a second left in the game. Of course, the 49ers were trying to put it away. And while they got a first down on the very first run from Christian McCaffrey on this drive, there were still 3 minutes and 56 seconds left. So it wasn't too bad. But with that being said, they would get the stop, despite Jauan Jennings trying his best to activate some George Pickens powers, man. Like, Kobe Bryant, dude, is, oof. As good as he can be, the fact that he got trucked a little bit by Kobe Bryant and then, Jauan Jennings, and then damn near stiff-armed by him as well before forcing him out, it's just horrible. Still, it mitigated the overall game that he could have had, and they gave the Seahawks a chance to get the ball back. And what do you know? Start out with DK Metcalf mossing the hell out of Renardo Green. He quite literally just utilizes his full arm, his one whole arm, DK Metcalf, to rein in the ball on the sideline. Meanwhile, Renardo Green, the rookie, is trying his hardest to rip it out with both of his hands as he gets his feet dragged in completely. They challenged the ruling, but it ended up standing. It would be detailed over the course of the drive as he continued carving up the defense with Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? That Geno Smith was apparently 0-5 against the 49ers over the course of his career. And also, again, we know that the Seahawks haven't beaten the 49ers with Brock Purdy as the starting quarterback, but that would change. There would come a point in time where in between all that, you get a 16-yard run by Geno Smith on 2nd and 13 from the 49ers' 37-yard line to extend the drive. Their last timeout would be wasted, and after this 8-yard catch by Jackson Smith and Jigba, they would have to hustle to the line. Surely enough, they get it snapped at a reasonable time. Geno Smith drops back. He sees a very favorable running lane to go through, and he runs that shit in for a 13-yard touchdown run to clutch up the game. He hit the night-night celebration at all, which was very bold, but fuck it. The potential game winner, you're going to do what you got to do, man. And it's a very strong win, but only if you can hold on for the last few seconds. And they would. The 49ers would obviously attempt some lateral plays, and it flopped completely on his head. It failed. It resulted in a fumble. And either way, There was OPI on the backup tight end for them. So the game was done. Seahawks improved to 1-5. Well, he improves to 1-5 against the 49ers, Geno Smith. Seahawks beat Brock Purdy for the first time, with Geno having 221 passing yards, no touchdowns. But again, the game-winning rushing touchdown. That's what ended up mattering the most. 94 overall yards rushing. Jackson Smith and Jigba led the way with 10 catches for 110 yards, and DK Metcalf had 7 receptions for 70. Very quiet game for most other people. Nobody had more than 2 receptions, and no one else had more than 19 yards. Hey, again, I'm here for that, because you can have those games where Jackson Smith and Jigba's doing that, and then don't sleep on Tyler Lockett. Like, I don't care what these people, delusional ass people, were saying. That man is still a threat. Y'all have to stop playing. Now, Brock Purdy had 159 yards passing. They were checking the ball down left and right. 75% completion, a touchdown, an interception. McCaffrey had 79 rushing yards and also 27 receiving yards. Another game with more than 100 yards from scrimmage. Back-to-back to start off this return of his. Brock Purdy would also have 40 rushing yards for some reason. Juwan Jennings had 10 receptions for 91 yards and a touchdown. Now, granted, I understand that you had guys like Brandon Ayuk out. You had George Kittle not being healthy and able to play in this game. And Nick Bosa would even get taken out of the game with an injury himself. I understand that they were depleted, but honestly, so were the Seahawks. They still are, in essence. And matter of fact, in the very first matchup between these two teams, the Seahawks had a litany of fucking injuries out, especially in the secondary. So that game can't even be played, man. You can't do that, bro. Like, don't flip it on his head because you didn't get the result that you wanted this time. You got to play the team that's in front of you. And y'all beat a depleted Seahawks team in the first matchup. Like, it just is what it is sometimes. That can't really be controlled. Both of them sit at 5-5. Cardinals still managed to have control of the NFC West for some reason. But, they're just trying their hardest to fight for potential playoff spots. Seahawks will be facing Cardinals next week, and the 49ers will be facing the Packers, with hopes of continuing to keep their playoff hopes alive. So we'll have to see how both of those matches go. I'll take it back to the Thursday night football action between the Eagles and the Commanders. Now, for a good portion of this game, most of the first half, I was occupied and could not watch the game like that. But from what I saw, as soon as I got to seeing what was going on, defense was at a premium in this one. I mean, it doesn't help that Jake Elliott missed multiple field goals in the first half. But, the only touchdown came from Brian Robinson Jr. in the first quarter. Outside of that, nothing much was going on, man. And I mean, granted, the scale would very much be completely reversed in the second half for at least, honestly, I can't say both sides. I mean, when you look at the score, it's a lot closer than what it really seemed like. With that being said, the Eagles, for whatever reason, I'm trying to see if I can find the play, but it looks like they attempted something similar to what the Commanders did against the Steelers last week with De'Ami Brown trying a little flea flicker, which I didn't understand that at all. So it's like, if that did not work for them, why in the hell would it work for you this time? Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. I'm not going to hold you, man. But either way, the Eagles, Saquon Barkley, as great as he had played before this game here, for a while there, he was getting clamped up. Yards per carry were not even remotely high at all. The lanes were completely clogged, and the likes of Daron Payne and all were completely shutting him down, in essence. And that made it more difficult for everyone else to get going, quite frankly. Still, they would trade field goals to open up the third quarter. However, a few things would happen here and there. You would have Ohio State continuing to assert their dominance over Iowa, right? Got Noah Brown just completely working the likes of Cooper DeJean on that very field goal drive that they had. And then Eckler, too. I'll detail numbers in a bit, but he logged a pretty crazy game. He was really trying to take it back to his prime. At least in the receiving game, because the Philadelphia Eagle, Georgia Bulldog trenches D-line, they would completely shut down their run game as well. Neither team could effectively make anything happen in that aspect. So, again, very slow-paced game. There was a point in time, too, that Terry McLaurin didn't even have a single reception at all. He'd been targeted, but he hadn't caught the ball. I guess there was a balance of Jaden Daniels not being able to locate him, but also the Eagles potentially doing a good job of accounting for him, which is not something that you see all too often. Quick ode to Bobby Wagner. Y'all need to give that man his fucking respect, bro. I don't care. He's still him. Real shit, man. Now, you would get them taking it out of the third quarter, and the Commanders would have a 10-6 lead. But the Eagles were driving. The Eagles were certainly moving their whole selves down the field, trying to fight back in this one. And surely enough, with a little help from Saquon Barkley in the receiving game on a 43-yard catch on that previous field goal drive, having him heat up was going to be important to their success. And granted, they got him involved a little bit, but they also had to incorporate Devontae Smith. They had to incorporate A.J. Brown. And that would lead to another Jalen Hurts vulture touchdown, ironically enough. Even on a certain play on this drive, getting Jeremy Chin in a spot where he was just all night on multiple people dishing out the biggest hits and then just not even being able to take them himself. He felt the brunt of them while dishing them out. That's crazy. I don't know. But this would be Jalen Hurts' 11th rushing touchdown by a quarterback, which is the most through 10 games. Zach Ertz has still been doing very well for them for some reason. Like, he's trying to get back to his prime years as well. And also, he wanted his revenge. I mean, that makes sense, right? But, like, yo, that's just fucking insane, dude. Real talk. Now, McLaurin once more show Cooper DeJean who's boss in this college football shit. But they would get promptly stopped on 4th down. They turned the ball over on downs, and they would give Philadelphia the ball back on their 26-yard line. This is where Saquon Barkley came alive. If they needed to get him going to have a chance, he single-handedly put the game away. It was almost as if he had his own takeover moment, but like the NFL or Madden style version of a 2K takeover. Because this man gets a 23-yard rushing touchdown with a good extra point this time, because Jake Elliott was a little inconsistent in this game. Reed Blankenship would get an interception on the next drive, and then Saquon Barkley would have a drive where he logged 2 rushes and 46 yards by himself for the potential game-sealing touchdown. Now, things got a little interesting with this Commanders drive that followed, as they would drive all the way downfield. Even with him making some errant decisions, they would ultimately get a touchdown to Zach Ertz, a pretty crazy one at that. Ball got tipped up, and he, as he's falling backwards, manages to get his feet down, and the ball just plops right into the breadbasket somehow. Then they also managed to get the 2-point conversion, which was similarly contested and very unorthodox, but the shit worked. They would go for the onside kick, and Dallas Goedert sealed it up from there. Shit did get really weird, and again, a 26-18 win by the Eagles. Maybe not as close as it seemed with that stretch in the 4th quarter, but I guess the Eagles have been that team consistently. Apparently, they've averaged 9.8 points in the first half, which ranks on the lower end in the league, but then they also average at least 16.1 points in the second half, which ranks near the top, if not at the top, of overall scoring by all teams in the league in the second half this season so far. So that's a pretty interesting stat line. I mean, I guess it can be a good thing to have those very hot finishes, but you don't want to continuously get yourself in a situation where you're starting slow and then you get behind the wagon too much, because then you're fucking screwed. Especially when we get into postseason football. But the Eagles, sitting at 8-2, look primed to do so. They now have control of the NFC East. The Commanders at 7-4 could still probably vie for a wild card spot, but they just got to keep on winning. You don't really want to drop too many more games like this to try to secure a reasonable seeding for yourself. All right. We will move on next to this game between the Steelers and the Ravens. Now, it started off very unfortunate for all the Ravens fans out there and for Derrick Henry. He would immediately be pissed off by this Steelers defense and how good they are, because they forced him to fumble the ball on the second play of the game. And it gave the Steelers easy position to work with in terms of their spot on the field. Now, Derrick Henry, and Najee Harris for that matter, would have some relatively decent games. And I mean, Najee Harris was really trying his hardest to be a runner of the football. It's probably Arthur Smith's fault. I don't know why they thought that they could make that happen, but it wasn't sustainable enough by the end of it. Ultimately, they would fizzle out at the Ravens' 14-yard line and be forced to kick a field goal. This may also very well be foreshadowing. At this point, they had scored at least some kind of points off of a field goal, touchdown, safety, PAT, whatever. The Steelers had done that for 18 consecutive quarters at this point, which is the longest current streak. That would be extended to 21 by the end of this game. But that's neither here nor there. Credit to the Ravens, though, because with their own struggles, and trust me, when I say Lamar Jackson was struggling in this one, they did not break all that much on defense. I mean, they continue to keep them clamped down on field goals. It would also be stated, too, that with Lamar Jackson having his own struggles, like that's one aspect in and of itself. Derrick Henry had never beaten the Steelers in his career either. Both of them were looking to make something happen for the first time. Oh yeah, let me see if I can go and pinpoint this, because there was an announcer gaffe as well that really yeah, here we go. Alright, the Steelers get the ball back after a Ravens punt, and we get to a third down where they try to go for Calvin Austin III. It's broken up by Brandon Stevens, but I believe this is Charles Davis on this call. This man literally mistakes Calvin Austin for Miles Austin, the former Cowboys wide receiver, who stands much taller and plays the same position, but not even remotely close to the same team. So far long ago, to be honest as well. Like, so long ago was the time in which he played. There's no way you made that mistake. Like, seriously? Then the Justin Tucker struggles would kick in as well. He missed multiple field goals by the end of the first quarter, and it's like, it is tough. It is tough, bro. It didn't help that they had to continuously settle because guys like Deontay Johnson, who should also be trying to get his own revenge, just would not make anything happen at all. Lamar Jackson had a few solid plays over the course of the second quarter, but again, nothing was panning out. Nothing was panning out at all. Until you get Zay Flowers getting in the mix and doing whatever it is that he does. Eventually, they would get another drive by the, near end of the second quarter, and Derrick Henry would subsequently score a rushing touchdown. They would have another fumble. Another one after a Steelers punt. Isaiah Likely would be the culprit there. Boswell, Chris Boswell is actually him, right? He, since 2015, has had a 20% lead on overall accuracy for kickers who have kicked at Acrisure. That's just unmatched. It's like, do you really expect anything less? No, I don't really think you should. Third quarter would see field goal after field goal after field goal. That's quite literally how it went. Because Lamar Jackson, though some strides were being made when push came to shove, he was still feeling that heat. And there's almost nothing that he could do about it. So the Steelers would get out of it with a 15-10 lead by the end of the third quarter. We saw some guys get involved. Trey White made a pretty decent deflection to force the Steelers into a field goal. Justin Fields would be subbed in to get some rushing yards on a field goal drive as well. But the Steelers, despite all of that, still had They still completely had it. Now, we open up the fourth quarter, and they would have to punt the ball again. Now, Pickens and Wilson would continue to get themselves in favorable positions, and you would also see Darnell Washington get a 25-yard catch on this drive before Russell Wilson was intercepted by none other than Marlon Humphrey. Now, the Ravens would get an interception of their own, but honestly, this one isn't on Lamar Jackson because the way that the ball was thrown to Justice Hill out of the backfield, there honestly isn't a better way for a quarterback to throw that. And he got muscled by Peyton Wilson, a rookie edge rusher from North Carolina State. Justice Hill. It's like, where is your strength at, man? He just completely ripped the ball away from him at the perfect time. And it turned the favor for the Steelers, allowing them to extend their lead to 8. Zay Flowers would, again, up and down game for him, to be honest. He would have a pretty inopportune drop on this drive that could have led to a very easy gain earlier in it. But he would eventually score the touchdown to cap it all. Now, they would go for 2, and for whatever reason, they tried to have Lamar Jackson run it, knowing that it would be expected by the defense. So that failed completely. Justin Fields would get the dagger and show him how it's done, though, getting a 9-yard run to get them to 3rd and 1 before Najee Harris picked up the first down, and the Steelers were able to kneel it out to get the 2-point victory. The Ravens have been 4-4 in the AFC and 3-0 against the NFC. You're going to have to get that together in the long run. Meanwhile, everybody wanted to worry about the Steelers not having faced any AFC North competition up to this point since their schedule is so backloaded. It's safe to say that they could very well be just fine. Now, like I said, Lamar Jackson in this game struggled. 16 of 33 passing for 207 yards and a touchdown and an interception. Even with 46 yards rushing, this game was just completely inaccurate. Errant throw after errant throw. And that pressure, no matter what, was getting to him all game long. At a certain stretch, it wasn't even like necessarily drops. There were some crazy overthrows as well. So as much as he could be an MVP candidate still and maybe the leader, this was a terrible game. There's no dodging that reality. No matter, you can't really escape that. I'm sorry, bro. They needed a little more, and the Steelers always make this kind of thing happen against you. You've got to figure it out at some point. That's all I'm saying. Derrick Henry would have 65 rushing yards and a touchdown. Isaiah Likely would lead the way for the Ravens with 75 receiving yards and 4 catches. Zay Flowers had the only Ravens touchdown in this game. For an offense that is tops in the league, that is not, very off day, if I do say so myself. Now, Russell Wilson had 205 yards. Again, no touchdowns, an interception. Najee Harris had only 3.5 yards a carry, but again, 63 yards. George Pickens would have 8 catches for 89 yards as well. And again, this is Chris Boswell's second game this season. You remember the one against the Falcons. This man won the game by just kicking field goals with his own fucking leg. If that isn't some team MVP type shit, I don't know what to say, man. I really don't know what else I can say there. Like, that's tremendous work. And I know Chris Boswell's one of the older kickers in the league. And the fact that you can be so reliant on him to get the job done, is a pretty good feeling. And again, Justin Tucker is going through quite the reverse right now. He has the reputation. The evidence is there, but it's been a struggle so far this season. So there were different, rumors or so being posed about him being in kicker competitions with another kicker that the Ravens might try to bring in. But that would eventually be shut down, as they would state themselves that they had no intent of having a competition. They gonna stick with Justin Tucker through this thing. And that's something that I can respect. Like, it's only right. You don't just go ahead and do that shit when the times get tough. That man has done so much for your organization. You gotta do right by that man. If it's really like this, then that's very tough. But you've got to still give him that chance. You owe him that. You owe him that. The amount of times that he has had to single-handedly bail y'all niggas out, y'all better not try to get yourselves in a spot where he needs to compete with another fucking dude. Right? Like, no. Get out of here, man. Alright, we'll move on in the Chiefs versus the Bills. Now, Mahomes this is a very weird season for him, man. I mean, you get a good start to Xavier Worthy, who would have a pretty solid game against the team that passed up on him or traded away his draft rights for the Chiefs to take him instead of just electing to take him out of fucking spite to spite the Chiefs and not even allow them to get a weapon like this. Real stuff, right? But on the second play, Mahomes would be intercepted by Taylor Rapp. Now, he was in the motion of being sacked and taken down to the ground, and he just chucked up a very weird pass, if I say so myself, to the defense. Now, Amari Cooper would get some action early on, getting a catch on a weaker corner in the rookie Johnson on the outside, number 13. Yeah, they were attacking him all day. All fucking day. Just foreshadowing. As you should, right? They're a little depleted without the likes of Jalen Watson out there. That's to be understood. So, with that person out there, you can continue to exploit that. And they made it happen. Curtis Samuel would also get involved a little active. And then it would lead to a 3-yard rushing touchdown by James Cook before Tyler Bass missed the PAT for some reason. Because of course he did. Punts would ensue before they would trade touchdowns to open up the second quarter. You get the O-lineman during this same drive getting a delay fade and bringing in a reception to extend the drive before Xavier Worthy would be targeted on 3 different passes and get a 10-yard touchdown catch. Then for the Bills, you have them responding with another James Cook touchdown after a dime of a pass. A dime of a 25-yard pass to Amari Cooper. He gets the ball lofting in the air, even as he's getting hit so far below the belt damn near by an incoming blitzer. Man, it was a beautiful play. I'm not gonna lie to you. Now, with these 2 quarterbacks, Romo was going to do his thing. Surely enough, it would happen over and over and over again. To even outline the amount of times it did would just be doing it a disservice. Like, there's almost no accounting for it, really. It's just going to happen at any different moment, random moment in the game. And there's nothing you're going to do about it. You just have to sit at home and take it all in, really. Even with Worthy having a good game, he still seems to have trouble getting his feet down in the boundaries on sideline catches. That's got to change. That would lead to a drive in which they punt it, but Josh Allen would be intercepted by Jamari Conner on the following drive, and that would get the Chiefs another chance to score a touchdown. Surely enough, they did, with Noah Gray catching the touchdown. They would kick a field goal, the Bills, to take a 16-14 lead to finish off the first half. 4 different punts by both teams in the third quarter would take place. Intentions were definitely high because, not to mention, that a little earlier, you get the linemen on both teams just completely scrapping. I don't know why. I don't know from what. It just happened. Gregory Rousseau got involved in it. Trey Smith got involved in it. It was just bad all around. Now, you have Josh Allen attempting to run and pick up a first down before he gets absolutely fucked up by Nick Bolton. No lie. Still, he would manage to be just fine, as he would deliver a dart to none other than Curtis Samuel for 12 yards to open up the fourth quarter. Once more, the Chiefs would respond with a touchdown to Noah Gray for his second of the day. While Shakir continued to eat that defense alive after the catch, it would ultimately come down to Josh Allen. Could never get the success in the playoffs and still hasn't. So you know he and the Bills are not trying to put themselves in a spot where they give Mahomes any ounce of feasible time to make something happen. And they would run this ball down their throats on a 12-play, 70-yard, and 5-minute, 36-second drive. That would end with a 4th and 2 conversion by Josh Allen that parlayed into a 26-yard touchdown run in which there was absolutely no tackling that took place whatsoever. Chiefs defense is definitely going to have to reevaluate what the hell they're doing. Those attempts were just futile, man. Quite literally just ran through every single one of them. And then Brian Cook just gets ran over and Josh Allen barrels into the end zone. And the Chiefs would turn the ball over on 4th and 13 as Terrell Bernard would get the game-stealing interception. The Bills would close it out. It is their 5th straight game with at least 30 points scored, which is the 3rd time for them in franchise history. They would be 9 of 15 on 3rd down, which would help, again, in situations where you're trying to keep your offense on the field to be that prolific from there and that efficient. Oh, that's certainly good. They won the turnover margin. They held Mahomes to 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, and 196 yards passing. The 60 rushing yards by Kareem Hunt aren't bad. And again, 5 total touches in 68 total yards and a touchdown for Xavier Worthy is also not bad. But again, you can tell that they are missing some core guys. And it'll be seriously interesting to see what happens when they get Pacheco back. Because, while they've managed fine if they're undefeated, having him back there does give them another element to work around and make defenses account for. Josh Allen would have 262 yards and a touchdown pass with an interception, while also leading his team in rushing yards with 55 and a touchdown. Khalil Shakir would lead the way in the receiving game with 70 receiving yards. Curtis Samuel would have 58 in the touchdown, and Amari Cooper would have 55 yards receiving. Again, it seems as well, though, that they need a reversal of fortune at some point, because you're going to consistently beat the Chiefs in the regular season, and you're going to consistently lose to them when it matters the most. Maybe the script needs to be flipped at some point. Maybe you need to intentionally lose a game to them in the regular season so that come playoff time, you have a little more motivation to try and win the ball game. Just a thought. Moving on to Bengals versus Chargers, and this was another interesting game. Now, the first half started out stellar for the Chargers, and honestly, not at all for the Bengals. I mean, they had incomplete pass to T. Higgins early on to force a punt on their very first drive, and they would get a field goal on their next one. But they would continue to stall for the rest of the first half after that. The Chargers, meanwhile, ended up capping off their drive in the first quarter with a dart by Justin Herbert to Will Disley. I mean, hey, you know what I'm saying? You gotta respect that. The former Seahawk getting a nice touchdown pass from a pretty decent quarterback in the NFL. We'll say that, all right? Like I said, Bengals get another one. There was a forced fumble, apparently, with Denzel Perryman dishing out a dirty hit on T. Higgins, and it ended up forcing a fumble. After further review, it was not. But then Higgins would be dealing with a back injury after that, so he would miss a little bit of time. He would eventually come back to the game later, but even then, for the time being, it didn't do much of anything because Justin Herbert decided to activate his Jared Goff phase. The play actions were working. They were working, and they had to keep on going to it. A 26-yard touchdown pass to Quentin Johnston, then another run for a touchdown by J.K. Dobbins after more downs by Justin Herbert. And he was even activating some of his legs. Like, this man was getting fucking 30-yard scrambles and shit on the same fucking drive. Like, he was actually doing really well, I'm not gonna lie. They would cap off their first half performance with a field goal by none other than Cameron Dicker to give them a 24-6 lead. Just keep that in mind. Alright. Now, the second half would see a bit of a turnaround, a tremendous turnaround. The Chargers would eventually go up 27-6. And despite Joe Burrow quite literally dealing with the same porous O-line that he has for most of his career, because they were just getting right after him. Like, man, I mean, bruh. Yo, like, he was just getting clamped up. And errant passes were being thrown, yeah, but it don't help when your blind side isn't being protected and you're just feeling that pressure right up your back, dog. What are you supposed to do as a quarterback? Now, they would even try to get Herbert involved in a read option play for some reason. Like, at that point, you're really trying to be bold because there's no fucking way. Now, with that, they would be able to convert on their first touchdown drive, the Bengals, with a touchdown pass to none other than Jamar Chase. They would cap off the third quarter after another Chargers punt after Joseph Asai made a good play on Justin Herbert with a 42-yard touchdown catch by T. Higgins to convert a fourth down. They streaked. Both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the play and said, commit to one or else. And T. Higgins got right past the safeties for a beautiful dot right down the middle of the field. Still, the Chargers would be able to mount some huge plays here and there because the Bengals defense is that porous. But they would get a little lucky after forcing a fumble on Justin Herbert, which would end up being recovered by Geno Stone. Now, they would end up tying the ball game on this touchdown drive here, and it would be capped off by another Jamar Chase catch for a touchdown. The play before, Chase Brown got absolutely lit up by this Henley person. Absolutely lit up. There's no question about it. All right. But no, they were both bowling out. They were doing as best as they could to keep them alive. They would have a chance with this ensuing drive to take a lead. It may have been halted by an Alohi Gilman interception, if not for an Altita Ogbunia roughing the passer penalty that extended their drive. However, I guess they would say that ball just didn't lie. His 48-yard field goal attempt, Evan McPherson, would not be good, and the game would remain at 27-all. Foreshadowing. The Chargers would punt again in a game where the Chargers would honestly be ripe. With their history, they would be ripe to lose a game like this. But the Bengals, I don't know. Like, they are driving down the field with the likes of Chase Brown, with the likes of Jamar Chase, typical stuff. And once more, Evan McPherson misses the kick. 0 for 2 on chances to take the lead later in the fourth quarter. Still, they would be aided by a 22-second drive. Even with their corner and DJ Turner, the second being out after making a solid play to force a punt, and BJ Hill also being questionable, he still was able to get back in and force an incompletion that would eventually lead to that short punt and short drive. The Bengals would have another chance and couldn't drive down the field, taking up only 14 yards and 41 seconds off the clock, giving the Chargers the ball back with 2 timeouts and 55 seconds left to work with. Lab McConkey got activated. This man, whoo boy. He took some hits too, but he balled out. Lab McConkey accounted for the first 55 yards and 2 pass completions on this very drive. Now, it would be capped off with a 29-yard J.K. Dobbins touchdown run that would eventually give them a lead, and it would eventually close out the game, seeing as there wasn't enough time to mount together reasonable play calls for the Bengals to make something happen. Ultimately, which quarterback, which team folded worse? It was probably, honestly, the Bengals here. I can't even necessarily say, like, honestly, if you're Joe Burrow and the Bengals, you would have liked to have had a hotter start. But the fact of the matter is that when push came to shove, they fought back. They got back in the game after being down 21. The hard part was finished. You couldn't make 2 field goals from 51 and 48 yards. And Evan McPherson is regarded as one of the better kickers in the league. But I just don't know what the struggle is. And there's honestly not even any one thing, because it's just a revolving door of problems that hinder the Bengals from being able to win ball games right now. And it doesn't help that they seem to always start out so slow in the regular season. Now it's truly hurting them. You could not afford to lose a game over this 3-game stretch. You wanted to try to go undefeated if you could. Now you put yourself in a more dangerous situation. You've got to win your next 2 ball games. It's as simple as that. You sit currently, if I'm not mistaken, at 4-7. There is not a lot of room for error. Even if you lose 1, your season might be done depending on how everything goes. A rougher game for Joe Burrow, all things considered. Again, 56% completion, but 356 yards and 3 touchdown passes. Chase Brown had 28 total touches for 143 total yards. Joe Burrow had 28 rushing yards as well. T. Higgins led all receivers with 9 receptions for 148 yards, but Jamar Chase had 2 touchdowns and added 75 receiving yards of his own. Meanwhile, again, strong first half performance by Justin Herbert, but he would finish the game completing just 17 of his 36 passes and finished with only 297 yards after having a great number of that in the first half alone. Aforementioned 2 touchdown passes by him. J.K. Dobbins had 56 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns as well. But again, Herbert also led the way with 65 rushing yards of his own. Ladd McConkey, again, 6 catches, 123 yards for him. And Will Dissly also added 4 receptions for 80 and a touchdown score. For the Chargers, their defense went through the ringer in this one. But granted, you're playing against a stronger Bengals offense. I guess your mettle will be tested against a Ravens team that will be motivated to play a good game of football. But obviously, with the coaches literally knowing each other, they are brothers if you haven't picked up on that already. It could be a contested one. You know, who really knows? Now, this is what we've all been waiting for. It was a beautiful day yesterday, man. Very beautiful day yesterday. Came a little later than the typical Mondays, but it was ESPN's fault. They decided to allow a Cowboys game to be broadcasted on Monday Night Football. And they would be playing against the Houston Texans, right? You knew how this was going to end. It wasn't as conventional as other Cowboys belt-to-asses have been this season. But let me tell you something. There was no shaking it. You understand already how things were going to go. Okay? Dalton Schultz was on a mission to help redeem his teammate, especially after Nico Collins scored a touchdown very first play of the damn game, and they overturn it because of Larry Tunsil being the ineligible man downfield. Like, they were trying so hard to make sure that the Cowboys put up a good fight, and they tried and tried, even hanging in there for a little bit, still couldn't do it. Alright? The Cowboys, you know they can't guard the run, and subsequently, on this drive, Joe Mixon would get a 45-yard rushing touchdown. Then the Cowboys, with Brian Anger attempting a fake punt that I initially missed. He attempted a fake punt and completed the pass, but John Mechie III lit that nigga up. I don't know what made Mike McCarthy think he was Mike Tomlin for some fucking reason for. You saw it again. That one was not as contested as the one that Mike McCarthy tried here, and that even failed. So that how did you think that was gonna work for you, a lesser coach? I don't know. Even with Ohio State connections turn negative with C.J. Stroud throwing an interception to Malik Hooker, of all people. You gotta respect it. Iron sharpens iron, motherfucker. Alright? But look it. CeeDee Lamb being the literal bell cow of this team now. Cooper Rush would try to get it to him on a third down. And I suppose he was running an in route or something. I don't know what made Cooper Rush think that he had the anticipation to get it where it needed to be. But CeeDee Lamb was nowhere near breaking out of that route. And he just throws it straight to Derek Stingley Jr. It looks just as bad as it sounds. On the very drive after getting favorable field position. Or at least forcing a Texan stop. Surely enough, the Texans would mount a 10-play, 63-yard drive that lasted 5 minutes as Joe Mixon would get in the end zone again. With another nasty cutback on this drive after one of his earlier runs. And he was high-stepping straight into the end zone. Ends up stepping over this one Cowboys defender. It just ended up being so disrespectful. Now, the Cowboys would show a little bit of life as Kevontae Turpin would end up scoring a 64-yard touchdown run. Catch, rather. It was a run after the catch. He had to utilize the fastest speed imaginable. He quite literally, according to Next Gen Stats, ran the fastest miles per hour by a ball carrier this season on that play. So, I mean, hey, you know he's a speed guy. You understand that. And it ended up being a very good one for them because it was their first drive, the Cowboys, at home, resulting in a touchdown in 27 straight drives since week 3. They had not scored a touchdown since the Ravens game. They had not scored a touchdown in AT&T Stadium since they had that terrible performance against the Baltimore Ravens. Like, man. The interesting thing for this next drive as well is that it started out a bit rough for both sides. I mean, you had Dameon Pierce fumbling the field goal kick, but you also had Marquise Bell, the special teamer in this case, attempting to tackle him, and what happened is that he reached out with his arm to try and wrap him up, and while he was falling down, he fell straight on his shoulder, and it looked as though he may need surgery for it because it was just blown out completely. He couldn't move it at all, so he was taken out of the game. DeMarvion Overshown would also get into some pretty ridiculous stuff as well. Like, Cowboys players seriously have to be questioned with some of what they're doing. Because as Joe Mixon would pick up a 37-yard catch and convert a first down, this man would add insult to injury by being called for going low on a defender. But he didn't attempt to pseudo chop block just one dude. No, he has two blockers straight in his line of sight. They are oncoming, going right for him to attempt to block him. And he goes low on both. Like, what did he think he was going to do? This isn't bowling. You're not even... It's literally a dangerous move in that situation. You're doing yourself a disservice. They would get a field goal and the Cowboys would respond before multiple miscues ensued for them. Their defense would try to hold strong as they would force multiple punts, and they were aided a little bit by Texans defensive lineman Danico Autry being out with a hyperextension. Still, you know that Brandon Aubrey is truly a unit, and he's been as prolific as a kicker in the history of the league has been in their first couple of seasons. But even he isn't enough always to consistently bail out the Cowboys. He missed from 40 before the half was done. Surprisingly enough, I was shocked. Still, they would get another chance at it, and they would turn the ball over on downs in 6 plays in 37 seconds. But of course, Mike McCarthy would continue the fuckery and call a timeout for some odd reason. What did he think that was going to do? The half was effectively over anyways. Even if the next play was a pass, like, why are you giving the Texans a chance to get the ball back at that point? I don't get it. But okay. Like, and the play itself is also just horrible. I don't even know if you've seen it at that point, but what happened was that they were somewhat attempting to go deep, or thinking that they were. They had one wide receiver on the right side of the field, and that was it. No other receivers were out wide. They had an extra blocker for some reason, and it was a play-action play. Every Texans defender was backed up deep. Why did Mike McCarthy think that he was going to catch them out off guard with that? That was a stupid play call. And they promptly got what it deserved, too. Cooper Rush threw it straight out of bounds. You know? Just horrible, horrible stuff. They would open up the third quarter with another punt. And credit to Derek Stingley Jr. as well, because he was all over CeeDee Lamb for the most part. You know, kept trying to throw it his way, and it would just get worse progressively from there. Real stuff, man. Now, they would get a field goal here, and then the Cowboys would turn it over on downs once more. However, not after some wild shit went down. Now, they would get on Houston's 46-yard line because it was a 4th and 20. They would have Brandon Aubrey attempt a 61-yard field goal, I would believe. And it was good, but Derek Barnett tried some crazy stuff out, okay? Personal foul, as the referee called it, head slap, number 95. Automatic first down. And when you see the replay, I was just bawling and laughing. This dude, Derek Barnett, former Eagle, D lineman, just went straight for the center and smacked him. It's craziness. And the worst part about it is, you know what they go on to do with that very second chance at potential success. They pick up a first down, and then Cooper Rush fumbles, proceeds to nearly throw an interception, and then throws short of the sticks before attempting a pass to none other than Jonathan Mingo for some reason. And it was incomplete. There was also offensive holding that would have affected the play call. And the fourth quarter would be reined in with that. The Texans holding a 20-10 lead. Now their defense in the passing aspect was still trying to hang in. They were doing relatively fine until this drive. This drive just drove in the fucking dagger so deep in everybody's back, man. They would be driving, as CeeDee Lamb would pick up a huge gain to start out before Donald got a 9-yard rush. Then we get to 2nd and 6 on Dallas' 40-yard line. Now, Cooper Rush would drop back, and Derek Barnett, with some help, would get there and force a sack fumble initially. But then a clown show would ensue as lineman Tyler Guyton attempted to run with the ball in his hands. Tried to haul ass, but Jalen Pitre is a dog, and he has something to say about that shit. He lit his ass up. Hit stick the shit out of him. The ball was fumbled again, and Derek Barnett would pick it up as a sort of full circle moment to get the touchdown. Their first defensive touchdown of the season, interestingly enough. It was fucking hilarious. What isn't necessarily hilarious is that Tyler Guyton would be out with his shoulder injury after that play. I wonder why that is, right? But Jalen Pitre wasn't done yet, as he would get another big hit on Luke Schoonmaker. He was penalized for it, but when you look at it, it wasn't even remotely targeting or a legal hit. It was fully legal. But yeah, just because of the modern day aesthetic, it's okay for the refs to flag everything that looks and talks like something dangerous. Like, bro, that was a very clean hit. You can't accept that people are just going to get rocked sometimes. Maybe they need to do a better job beforehand of preparing to withstand that kind of power. But that's just me. You know what I'm saying? Tyler Smith and Zach Martin would also be taken out of the game. Meanwhile, Joe Mixon with a touchdown run for another single-yard gain would be tied for the most all-time consecutive road games with at least 100 rushing yards and a touchdown with 5. He also has his 5th straight game this season with at least 90 or more yards from scrimmage and a touchdown. So that's credit to him. Now, culture was being discussed, and let's just say that when you have fans leaving the stadium early, anytime that's happening, your owner, general manager, everything is looking in despair. They had the camera panned on Jerry Jones so much, and he was going through it, man. Yeah, their culture, certainly, they not feeling that shit down there, bro. They aren't. It's, no. Not to mention, too, that the Cowboys would endure their 6th consecutive home game trailing by at least 20 points, which is the longest streak in NFL history for any one team. If their season wasn't done already, yeah, you literally have no chance, bro. Just keep on taking that belt to ass week in, week out, because it's entertaining for some, not for all. I understand that, but it's ridiculous to look at, man. And then you had a situation before the game as well where pieces of debris were literally falling off the fucking roof, and they had to clean it up before the game started. If that isn't a microcosm of everything that's been going on this season, I don't know what is. Your players are putting their bodies on the line, at least some players, and they're getting hurt all in hopes to aid a team to consistency on the positive aspect. Instead, you're consistently not playing hard. You're getting beat downs consistently almost every week. In fact, you have teams that have consistently outplayed you and disrespected you in your own home, calling all these hook and ladders to linemen, pulling out the most unfavorable, unorthodox play calls that probably wouldn't have a chance of working anywhere else, but because it's the Cowboys and they have all the momentum in all of the control of the game, they can do whatever the fuck they want, and they know that they can't stop it. And if they do, it's not going to last for long because they're still going to shoot themselves in the foot. It's just a bad way to operate, man. Your entire structure is crumbling from the inside. Something's got to give. Something's got to give, man. Like, seriously. If that isn't a sign, I don't know what it is. I'm dead serious. Like, there's just no other way to put it, man. How are you going to see that and tell me that this team is just fine? They're just dandy. All right? No. It doesn't work that way, bro. I'm sorry, bro. Like, y'all seriously have got to check out what's going on. And again, it's, as many pundits and analysts have alluded to, it's not like it had to be this way. Their roster is not necessarily that bad, but there were holes that needed to be filled that they did not even get a chance to invest in because they just prolonged the process of getting their franchise cornerstone signed for no reason. And they still haven't signed Micah Parsons yet. And he's getting more frustrated. I don't know where exactly he could be trending, but it just can't be a good situation down there right now. Moving on to some other action. We got the Packers versus the Bears. And honestly, it looks like this game ended up being a bit controversial. I mean, the Bears would take a solid lead at the end of the half, 10-7, after Jordan Love threw his guaranteed interception per game to, I wonder if that's Tremon Smith. That would be interesting if that's Tremon Smith, actually. However, yeah, he threw a pick to him. And the Bears would go and score. Okay, Terrell Smith. Interesting. But yeah, new offensive coordinator, still struggling just a little bit. There isn't much improvement there just yet. But they did a nice job of keeping themselves within striking distance at all times because their defense is that good. All you've got to do is just make some progress as an offense. And the defense will do their best to aid you. You just have to reciprocate it. They would score a field goal to open up the third quarter before a touchdown run by Josh Jacobs gave the Packers a short, very small lead. DeAndre Swift would respond with a 39-yard touchdown run of his own, and the 2-point conversion would fail. With the Packers turning it over on downs to open up the fourth, it looked like the Bears could have it. Instead, they took up 12 plays, 44 yards across 7 minutes and 2 seconds. And punted the ball. What? They punted the ball on a possession like that. They didn't even, like, how is that even possible? So that's certainly like, okay, yes, Shane Waldron may have had to go and you needed a change at some point, but the fact that you have a drive that lasts for that much time and you don't make it past midfield, you don't get in plus territory at all, you stay on your own side of the 50? Like, That ain't good at all. It would only take 1 minute and 18 seconds, meanwhile, for the Packers to score a touchdown. Now, it was aided by a 60-yard catch by Christian Washington, which no one accounted for him because it didn't travel the whole distance, but he was able to run a good, 30 to 40 extra yards because no one would go and touch him while he was down. So that was interesting. Jordan Love would eventually get the touchdown that would give the Packers the lead. Packers drove 42 yards down the field across nearly 3 minutes to get to Green Bay's 28-yard line before attempting a kick, and it probably would have been good if not for the fact that it was blocked by the trenches of the Packers, and thus the Packers would win 20-19. Now, apparently, Matt Eberflus and the Bears would attempt to send over the kick for review on behalf of the different referees and everything, league office. And they believe strongly that they should have been penalized for completely covering the center in the way that they did. The Packers obviously are going to contest that. They strongly believe it, so we'll see how it continues to progress from there. Still, though, when you are the Bears and you have 36 minutes and 21 seconds of time of possession, you go 9 of 16 on third down, and 3 of 3 on fourth down. There's no way that you should even be in a spot like that in the first place. You won the turnover margin. Everything lined up in your favor. And you still had the issue of not being able to close out drives. At the end of the day, that does come down to execution as well. That's not necessarily just the OC or the coaching. No, man. That's unacceptable, bro. Real talk. Now, in this game, Caleb Williams would pass for 74.2% completion and 231 yards while adding 70 rushing yards on the ground. By no means was it terrible, but you just need it. You need a little more. You need a little more. Even if it did come down to a field goal getting blocked, you needed way more there. DeAndre Swift would have 71 rushing yards and a touchdown. Ramadunze would lead receivers with 65 receiving yards as well. Christian Watson, on the other hand, for the Packers, had 150 receiving yards on 4 catches, accounting for more than half of Jordan Love's passing yards, which ended up being 261. And 76.5% completion isn't bad for him either, but this man got to stop throwing picks, bro. I don't know how much I can say it, man. They've got to cease. Every time they are thrown, in one aspect or another, they hurt the Packers. Because a team subsequently scores or extends momentum to their side by making it happen. You just can't have that reputation, you know? A solid win for the Packers. Moving on to the Rams and Patriots. I'm not going to lie, I was surprised as I was tracking it. Because to the Patriots' credit, despite their defense not being able to stop a lick for the most part, they did, in fact, make it very tight on the Rams. I'm not going to hold you. Drake May seemed to be making some really good reads. And that has been the theme of most of his starts so far. He'll start off a game making very good reads and very good plays, but when it's time to step it up in the clutch, yes, as a rookie, that's certainly a daunting task, but he more often than not seems to falter. And this is exactly what would happen. Now, to take it back to the end of the third quarter, Colby Parkinson, the former Seahawk tight end. Once more, what a day for former Seahawks tight ends, you know what I'm saying? But either way, he would score a 19-yard touchdown, and they would take it up 28-13. Patriots would then open up the fourth quarter with a touchdown drive of their own, being capped off by a big man touchdown to Vadarian Lowe. A punt would be forced on behalf of the Patriots defense before the Patriots scored a field goal, and then they would force another punt. Now it was a 28-22 ball game with 2 minutes and 14 seconds left, and at one timeout as well. The drive started out very slow, as he would get sacked for 7 yards after a short run to push it to 3rd and 13 on their own 25. He would force up a deep pass that was picked off by Cameron Kinchins, and it would end the ball game from there. Certainly tough for the rookie. You've got to be proud of yourself that you're at least competing respectably in these ball games. But eventually, you want to be able to come out on the winning side. The chance was there for the taking. And like I said, Drake may just completely fail. It is what it is, though. But you want him to learn from those experiences, 30 of 40 passing for him. 282 yards and 2 touchdowns with the aforementioned pick. He also added 27 rushing yards. Kendrick Bourne had 5 receptions for 70 yards and the aforementioned touchdown. Meanwhile, for the Rams, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp dominated all game. Even with the defense, they couldn't stop those guys. They combined for 229 receiving yards and 13 catches for 3 total touchdowns. With Cooper Kupp actually getting a 69-yard touchdown catch as well, which was interesting. The whole defense just completely lost him. And even with him not being that fast, he was able to just skate right past everybody to the end zone. So I didn't see that coming at all. Kyron Williams had 15 rushes for 86 yards as well. Moving on to the Saints and Browns, all I've got to say is this, man. We can get to the numbers very quickly, but all I want to say is this. The Saints are so lucky to have Tayson Hill, man. Do you know how lucky it is for them to land on a do-it-all player like Taysom Hill? A gunner who can literally play multiple positions, right? And do what he's doing at the ripe age of 34 while still having his 10-year, $100 million contract, even if it's not fully guaranteed. And he had himself a fucking game today. Derek Carr did all right, but the fact that you are the Saints and you had to depend on this man to lead you to victory over Derek Carr is ridiculous. That's not to say that Derek Carr didn't do fine, I guess. 248 yards, 2 touchdowns, 77.8% completion, no stakes involved. Of course he's going to play well. Marquez Valdez-Scantling had another short catch that went for a 70-yard receiving touchdown, this time a 71-yarder, and he would lead the way with 2 catches for 87 yards and a touchdown. Now, Taysom Hill's day here, to just put it into perspective, he would be the first NFL player since 1971. Just keep that in mind. 1971. With at least a completed pass, 50 receiving yards, and a rushing touchdown. The first. You know how difficult that is? Now, he threw an interception. That's tough. And surely he did fumble the ball as well. Fair. Still, a completed pass for 18 yards, 7 rushes for 138 yards, and 3 touchdown runs, including a 75-yarder. Alright. And 8 receptions for 50 yards. They better thank goodness they have him. That's all I've got to say. In a game where Jameis Winston was seeking revenge, he didn't fully get it, but he played well. 30 of 46 passing, 395 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Jerry Jeudy would actually have a game today, that on Sunday as well, getting an 89-yard touchdown reception and tallying 142 total yards on 6 receptions. David Njoku would have 9 receptions for 81 yards as well. Browns were in a similar spot. It's not necessarily that they just... Their defense was porous in this one. Let's just call it what it is. To allow Tayson Hill to do that is pretty wild stuff. But they had chances to make things happen. I mean, time of possession was nearly even. They had 29 minutes and 22 seconds. New Orleans had 30 minutes and 38 seconds of time of possession. And they had 443 yards. They just couldn't finish off drives. Same story. Also, 3 of 13 on third down is never going to help you win a ball game and extend drives in the first place. But winning the turnover margin should have made this game a lot closer than what it was. Still, by that point, it did not even remotely feel like it. Moving on to the Raiders and the Dolphins. Their offense is semi-back. The Raiders are still trying to figure out what the hell they have going on. I mean, after electing to go with Desmond Ridder, they then switched back to Gardner Minshew II, and he has another subpar performance with only 30 of 43 passing for 282 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their rushing game made them completely one-dimensional. 16 rushes for only 60 yards. Brock Bowers is the only saving grace they have. 13 receptions for under 26 yards and a touchdown for him in this game. Not to mention that Amir Abdullah managed to catch a damn touchdown pass in 2024 as well. Pretty wild stuff when you think about it. The Raiders, with this 34-19 loss, would have a 6-game losing streak now, which apparently is their longest since the 2017-18 season. So I found that very interesting. Meanwhile, the Dolphins do as best as they can to stay alive. They've got work to do as well, but they do their best here. I mean, Tua Tagovailoa had a pretty good game. 288 passing yards, 3 touchdown passes, and 77.8% completion. Devon Achane with 73 rushing yards and a touchdown, along with 32 receiving yards. Jalen Waddle had 2 for 37. Tyreek Hill had 7 for 61, and his touchdown catch as well. Back-to-back games of touchdown catches after not having a single one since week 1 prior to their game last week versus the Rams. And Jonnu Smith would have a hell of a day as well, adding in a 57-yard reception touchdown to go along with 101 total yards and 2 total touchdowns on 6 receptions. Moving on to the Jags and the Lions. They got torched. 52-6. Jared Goff with 412 passing yards, 82.8% completion, and almost as many touchdowns as incompletions, with 4 to go along with those 5 incompletions. Hendon Hooker even managed to step in and complete 75% of his passes, picking up 37 yards. Lions also had 196 rushing yards and 3 different touchdowns on 4.6 yards per carry, reining in an overall 645 yards total before we account for sacks. Alright? Oh, well, granted, honestly, it didn't even feel like that. It didn't even feel like that happened, to be honest. Let me do my due diligence. Alright? He didn't get sacked one time. Screw that. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 11 receptions for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns, catching all 11 targets and scoring in his 8th straight game, which is a franchise record. Jamison Williams with 4 receptions for 124 yards and a touchdown, including the 64-yard catch for that very touchdown. Trying to emulate Marshawn Lynch. He was off just a little bit. I respect it, but he was a little off on it. I'm not going to hold you. Meanwhile, 3 TFLs, a pick, and 2 pass deflections for the entirety of the Lions defense. Mac Jones went 17 of 29 from the field, threw a pick. Travis Etienne Jr., it's been a struggle for him all fucking season, whether it's been injuries or really just playing. I don't know. Something's happened, because 12 receptions for 27 yards isn't cutting it. But that's really all I can detail for this right now. I will have a decent amount to say when I incorporate what ended up taking place through the course of the week leading up to this very game, to give my full scope on it. But that was certainly a game for the ages for a Jaguars fan. I don't know. Vikings and Titans, once more, the Titans get up early in a ball game as they would take a 3-0 lead before the Vikings then managed to score on a 47-yard touchdown catch by Jordan Addison. From there, even if it felt like the Titans defense was holding up, the Titans offense was not doing a whole lot to help their case, and they would subsequently lose the game 23-13. Will Levis had a touchdown and an interception on 54.8% completion from the field and 295 yards passing. He ended up being the leading rusher in a game which saw the Titans rush for 19 times and only 33 combined yards across 3 rushers. Tyjae Spears actually managed to finish without netting a single rushing yard, and having a long of 4 yards on a run. Even with Westbrook-Ikhine managing to get a 98-yard touchdown catch and finish the ball game with 117 yards receiving, that still did relatively jack shit, to be honest. The Vikings they didn't have to do much to assert their own dominance, but they did. Their rushing game wasn't necessarily dominant either, rushing 33 times for 82 yards and 2.5 yards a carry. However, Sam Darnold did get a rushing touchdown, and he added 2 more passing touchdowns with 246 yards and 62.5% completion from the field. Of course, Justin Jefferson led all receivers in receiving yards with 81 and receptions with 6. He would also surpass Torrey Holt for the most yards by a receiver in their first 5 seasons. I believe the number was 6,800 something. I can check this out, to be honest, because I want to make sure that I'm right on that. Okay, so Hey, was it 6,000? Okay, so yeah, he ended up surpassing this record set by Torrey Holt, which was 6,811. He did it by exactly a yard, according to what I'm seeing from here on Fox Sports' database. His final catch did the deed, so shout out to him for that. The Titans are probably finished as well. I know that point is consistently reiterated, but it's probably true. There's just they're not, bro. I'm sorry. They don't have it, man. They don't. Colts and Jets. The Jets may not have it either. I mean, first of all, credit to Anthony Richardson. Maybe he really did learn something. I don't know, because what he managed to pull off is actually pretty wild when you do think about it, right? I mean, you take a commanding 13-0 lead over them, aided by a touchdown drive at the beginning of the beginning of the second quarter that saw him punching in from 2 yards out and run over niggas for a touchdown. But the Jets, meanwhile, again, consistently just shooting themselves in the foot week after fucking week. Because in a period of time, you go back to last week, and you had nearly as many points as possessions. Now, in the first quarter, you're punting on 3 different possessions. In the second fucking quarter, on the other hand, you open it up by turning the ball over on downs while just gaining 9 yards and allowing the Colts to take over in your territory. Thank goodness that they only allowed a field goal. Then you punt it again. Thank goodness that your defense has somewhat of a good reputation, because the Colts were forced to punt again. And then a touchdown would come for the Jets here, as Breece Hall would get a 29-yard catch for a touchdown. They would turn the ball over on downs, the Colts, to finish off the half, and also fumble the ball to open up the second half. As Javon Kinlaw, the former 49er, would recover it, the Jets would go on to score a touchdown from there, with Breece Hall doing the damage again, getting an 18-yard rushing touchdown. The Colts would retake the lead 16-14 on a field goal, and then more punts would come. Another field goal by the Jets, somehow, some way, because Anders Carlson, yes, that Anders Carlson, is now with the squad. There's a coach that I guess wants to have faith in him and isn't so dreading of the moment, so dreadful of the moment. They would do more good things for themselves, as Kenny Yeboah would get an 11-yard touchdown catch from Aaron Rodgers to open it up 24-16. While the Colts would fail the 2-point conversion, they would have a response, as Josh Downs would get a 10-yard catch. And then the Colts defense, credit to them, would hold them to a field goal, as the Colts themselves would get the ball back with 2 minutes and 41 seconds left to go. And looking very good in the timeout department as well. They didn't even really have to utilize them, it seemed like. Anthony Richardson would drive himself down the field, having a good balance of some strong runs and some very accurate deeper passes to get themselves into a 3rd and goal from the 4-yard line on the Jets side of the field, and they would score a touchdown. Anthony Richardson gets it in for the dagger, though the 2-point conversion was failed again. Colts defense would hold as Kwity Paye sacked Aaron Rodgers. Jets by that point had no timeout, which that's questionable in and of itself, and boom. Game over. Good work, Anthony Richardson. When it looked like all was lost for him, he responded with his most accurate game of the season and most promising game of the season. 66.7% completion from the field, 272 passing yards, a touchdown pass, 32 rushing yards, 2 touchdown runs. Alec Pierce would be secondary in this regard, getting 74 receiving yards. Josh Downs is the real hero. 5 receptions for 84 yards and a touchdown pass. Touchdown catch. Gotta respect that. Finally, we have a matchup of pathetic football teams, and the Falcons and the Broncos, for that matter. Somebody had to win it, and for whatever reason, Bo Nix managed to have his best game because the Falcons' defense is that fucking porous. And even in a low stakes, in a game in which it wasn't a primetime necessarily. I mean, sure, it was in that slate, but it wasn't on national television. And Kirk Cousins didn't even remotely perform up to par. It's very revealing that he started off the season as well as he did. He has not thrown a touchdown pass in his last 2 ball games. And he would throw an interception in this game with only 173 yards passing. The rushing game also, because as dependent as Kirk Cousins is on the play action, this is known facts. These are known facts about Kirk Cousins. He is highly dependent on play action, which means if he is on your team, he needs to be complemented by a respectable run game that the defense can account for. And they get caught off guard and boom, shot play or dink and dunk for a check down. If that's on and it's working, it's chef's kiss. But when it's off, you can tell. And that's essentially what Kirk Cousins went through. I mean, only 50 rushing yards across 3 different ball carriers and 21 total rushes. At that point, the Broncos could truly lock in on the pass because that's all that they could really make happen at that point. Drake London still managed to lead the way with 3 receptions for 61 yards, though. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Bo Nix is apparently the first in NFL history to log 4 or more touchdown passes. First rookie in NFL history, I should say, with at least 4 touchdown passes, at least 300 yards, and at least 80% completion from the field. That's just odd. A quarterback that has been renowned, not even necessarily, but recognized all season long for being one of the more inaccurate passers, managed to complete 84.8% of his passes for 307 passing yards and 4 touchdowns, easily his best performance of the season. Monte Williams had 9 rushes for 59 yards and a touchdown on the ground. With Jordan Humphrey would catch a touchdown, and so would Marvin Mims Jr., along with Troy Franklin for what I believe is his first. Still, it was the Cortland Sutton show with 78 receiving yards, and also Davon Vele, his former opponent from Utah, would get 66 receiving yards as well. But I guess you did see the full capabilities of the Oregon era of Bo Nix playing in college football, because this wasn't even remotely fathomable when he was at Auburn. That's the truth. He was quite the dual threat, but nowhere near this prolific in strictly the passing game. And I mean, we can say dual threat this, dual threat that. He only had 5 rushing yards this game. Just pure passing attack. And it worked for them because the Broncos could easily exploit it, it seemed. Even with the Falcons having somewhat stronger personnel in certain areas on the defensive side. But that don't cap it off for the games. In terms of general updates, I will say that, one, while the Seahawks went into the game electing to go with Oluwatimi, it was a pivot because we detailed on Thursday last week that Connor Williams would retire from the NFL at the young age of 27. Now, he was dealing with other injuries, but they weren't keeping him out of playing necessarily. He played in every single game. They are citing personal reasons, and I would really want to know what they are, but, I can't put that up to speculation. And you also have to have the respect for the individual if he doesn't want to spoil those specifics. So I guess we may never really know exactly why he chose this path, but you can only wish him the best from there on. And they did right by him by winning the game. So there you go. Also, be detailed that Daniel Jones, after a 2-8 start, would be benched for none other than Tommy DeVito. Some are questioning why Drew Lock isn't starting instead. I think it really doesn't matter. Dexter Lawrence is quoted as saying that Daniel Jones is the best quarterback on the team, and he has his own discontent about DeVito starting, which, granted, I guess that's fair, right? To an extent, he's correct. He is very much the best quarterback on the team, but is that really saying a whole lot when he plays how he's been playing? And he commands by far the most money on that team right now. So he should be playing like he is truly the best. And it seems like the best they have to offer is very fucking garbage. Their season's lost anyways. There are almost no ways to get out of this one. I really don't know about Daniel Jones in the future. I really don't. If only they would have attempted to just go for a quarterback in the draft, or at the very least, get the necessary players to surround Daniel Jones with in order to fortify his chances back there. And they failed at doing that. Another team that eventually failed to do that would be the Jets. Yes, they are horrible, and it's gotten even worse because after their start, they elected to fire Joe Douglas, their GM. Now, granted, he was 30-64 over his 5 seasons as their acting general manager, and some of the draft picks that he had were absolutely horrible, but a good portion of them have hit too, especially the ones of late. So I honestly felt like he probably should have been given a little more of a chance at least. But granted, with struggles like this and with the personnel that you have, somebody's got to be scapegoated at some point. And it ain't going to be those guys. So, the fall has to be taken by someone, I guess, unfortunately. It is just being detailed right now, as I'm seeing on NFL.com, that Todd Bowles informed reporters that Mike Evans could be trending to return Sunday. And it would be a grand old time, right? You have the New York Giants to face. Now, yes, he has been Mr. Consistent. However, with him missing all of that time, it could be stated that Mr. Mike Evans' 1,000-yard campaign streak may be in danger. Now, when I look here, he has 6 touchdowns receiving so far, but only 335 receiving yards in 7 games. Now, if we look at that average and account for it over an entire season, you're not really looking at a potential 1,000-yard campaign. If you mean to tell me that over the course of those 7 games, you're getting just 47.85, and you've missed 5 games since, or at least a few games since then. But that average across 17 games in a season would only gotten him to 813. He would have to have a nuclear last few games to even reach that mark. He has 7 games to do it, which would mean that he'd need to tally at least 100 yards or so in every single one. Can it be done? You have the Giants you're facing, you have the Panthers you're facing, you have the Raiders you're facing, you have the Chargers you're facing, you have the Cowboys you're facing, you have the Panthers again, and you have the Saints again. I think that it can be done. Honestly, when you look at that schedule, it's going to be hard. But think about it. The Giants don't have anybody at cornerback. J.C. Horn can probably hold his own against Mike Evans, but you're going to see him 2 times. There's a good chance that you'll get the better of him at least 1 time. You're not getting locked up by him. And the Panthers have no other cornerback there. Raiders don't really have any corner that can go toe-to-toe with him. The Chargers and Asante Samuel Jr. might stand a chance, but he could still pull through there. He's going to get the look from Trayvon Diggs face guarding him on this Sunday night football game on December 22nd against the Cowboys. That could be the toughest one, and that's saying a lot. Now, Paulson Adebo and Olante Taylor and those guys are actually doing some decent work down there in New Orleans, but obviously, man, with not having Marshawn Lattimore down there anymore to potentially lock him up, it hurts their chances a little bit of stopping him. So, he could do it. It is going to take a lot, and Mayfield is going to have to make sure that he is accounting for him at all times. It is unfortunate that Chris Godwin is going to be out for the rest of the season. He's not coming back, right? But Mike Evans will at least get an opportunity to have more reps in that regard, taking it back to how it was when he quite literally was the only receiver they had all those years ago with the likes of Jameis Winston and such. So, I mean, hey, it's not impossible, but a lot of work is going to have to be done. Meanwhile, another pressing development is that leading up to the Lions and Jaguars game, there were multiple reports accounted for by different NFL insiders that would state that the Jaguars were open to a regime change upon the results of the game on Sunday. And as I stated, 52-6. The Lions whipped their asses by 46 points. It is currently Wednesday, November 20th, 3:27 p.m. At the time that I am recording this video, the Jaguars have not made a move. They have not elected to fire Doug Peterson. They haven't elected to fire Press Taylor, even after back-to-back crushing performances. There's no way that a regime, a staff, at least the leaders of a staff, should be able to endure consecutive games with under 10 points scored. Consecutive games with losing the turnover margin. And then a blowout loss like that where you give up 600 plus yards of offense, that rarely happens in the NFL. And it's more prevalent in college. Not to mention the Lions could have done way worse if they wanted to. Like, these are inexcusable losses. And they are allowed to just stay there. What are you waiting on exactly? There are fairly good coaching candidates out there to look for. Like, do your due diligence. In fact, it already should have been done. The way that you've started this season, it should have already occurred to you that maybe Doug Peterson is no longer the right coach for your team. And you may need to weigh other options. It seems like they haven't done that yet, which makes no sense and just shows the incompetence going on around there. Like, you are not making the playoffs. You are not primed to make the playoffs. The leaders, the true leaders of the AFC South, are so far ahead of you at this point. It is going to be nearly impossible for them to suffer exactly what you did in terms of a collapse last season and give up that pole position. It's over. You have nothing to look forward to this year. So why are you holding out hope? Let those guys go. It's not worth it. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.